Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine the 16th of March of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to start with the Black Sea. As you know, today the Russians managed to find a place where the United States drone sunk. Some sources are saying that they moved their ship to this area, and also some sources are saying that the Russians managed to raise the parts of the drone to the surface, and maybe now this drone is somewhere on the way to the Russian science places or something like this. When talking about the United States of America, they reported that they don't have such possibility to get the drone from Black Sea, but the only thing that they added that as a result, before they lost control or before they lost connection with this drone, they managed to erase the software of this drone. And to tell the truth, this is very important because the software is priceless, and we understand if the Russians are able to get control over the software of such type of weapon like drones, believe me, the Russians in this case will be able to establish control over every single drone that the United States of America has. So let's see whether we're able to do this or not. Now let's return back to the ground, let's return back to the front lines, and today we have a lot of very interesting updates, and the most interesting, at least I suppose that this is one of the most interesting, is that the Ukrainians started or continued or have already completed the preparation of another defense line along Zhiribyets River. As you can see, the Russian source map has been updated. They added these blue lines, and this is the entire system of trenches and fortifications that started somewhere in the north of Zaparozhie and ended somewhere in the vicinity of Makeyevka. That means a lot. First of all, the Ukrainians, they understand that their situation on this front line is very poor. We discussed the numbers of the Ministry of Defense. They are saying almost every single day that the loss of Ukrainians is starting from the beginning of December, I believe so, is higher than 100 soldiers per day. And the reason of such a high level of losses is that there are no places where the Ukrainians are able to hide. There are just fields and no places where the Ukrainians can take their positions and to survive during some artillery attacks and so on. So they understand that they will be forced sooner or later to step back from this area because of keeping this area is some kind of like stupid situation. So that's why they have almost completed the preparation of the defense line along Zhiribyets River. So this is very interesting, and they're reducing the Russian chances and the Russians' possibilities to penetrate and to return back control over Liman. And now, from now on, and it was before as well, the only possible solution for the Russians is to start movement from Kupiansk. But nobody knows whether the Russians are going to do this or not, because maybe it's too long. It might be too long for the Russians. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes, the losses of Ukrainians on the Liman front line were 100 soldiers, 4 armored vehicles, and 2 artillery systems. On the Kupiansk front line, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles, and 1 artillery system M777. Now let's talk about Seversk, about Bakhmut. As you can see, there are no changes on this map. The only things that the Russian sources map has added is these yellow dots in this area, and they were trying to show the only road that Ukrainians have for recruiting, for rotation process, for resupplying process, and so on. So these yellow dots is the living road that Ukrainians are able to use somehow, partly with heavy losses, sometimes with low level of losses, but this is the only way. Furthermore, today the Russians reported about more and more cases when the Ukrainians were trying to run away from that town, because some sources are saying that some Ukrainian groups, some Ukrainian parts of their army that located in Bakhmut took a decision without receiving an order from their commanders to step back and to leave this town. But of course, during this process, they faced artillery attack and they had a lot of losses. Some sources were saying that there was another time when the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate, and they took a decision because they got under heavy fire. They took a decision to turn to the north, and they reached the outskirts of Bogdanovka, but they couldn't reach the Chasov Yar as well. So this road is not good, but well, we'll see. Furthermore, the Russian source map has been updated. Now they're showing the progress in the south part of Bakhmut, and as you can see, the Russians have almost reached the outskirts of this street. This is Tchaikovskого Street, this one, and this is the arteria that the Ukrainians uses to supply and support this town. And as you can see, this arteria goes through the MiG-17 17 state square, and the Russians have almost cut this area, and so the situation is critical. We discussed this many times, and furthermore, the Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians lost 275 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles, including 2 tanks and 4 artillery systems on Donetsk front line. And Donetsk front line, don't forget that it's not just Bakhmut, it's also Avdiivka as well. So there are also a lot of clashes, and a lot of sources are saying that Krasnogorovka has fallen by the Ukrainians. And today there was a very important note about this town. Let's return back to the Western sources map. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine gave us a very interesting report. As you can see, the Russian source map, the Western source map has been updated. As you can see, the situation for the Ukrainians is critical. I believe that within a few days we are going to see the fall of Veselaya and Kamyanka, and this is just a question of time, but not the question of whether the Ukrainians are able to keep these towns or not. And today the Ukrainians reported that as a result of Russian attacks, they managed to repulse the Russians' movements, the Russians' attack in direction of Berdichi-Stepovaya. So this is very important. So that attack was repulsed by the Ukrainians, but the fact is that the Russians are moving in these directions changed the entire picture. The Russians have, we see that they have progress, but believe me, the Russians have a lot of problems on this front line, and the main problem is that they don't know, maybe they don't know, but maybe they don't know how, maybe they don't have such possibilities, but they can't penetrate the south area, and this is the problem. And one more time, I'm trying to repeat this situation now almost every single days. Now the most important is timings. The Russians don't have much time, because soon the Ukrainians will start doing something. The weather is going to be perfect, and they have a lot of armored vehicles and so on. So now they need to do action. They need to complete at least some part before summer or spring comes, the real summer or spring comes. So the Russians were attacking in direction of Berdichi, because they see that they stuck on the south side. They're trying to develop their bridgehead on the north. And there is one important thing about this area. Let's take a look at the Institute of Study of War map, and you're going to see that Krasnogorka, and there is the highest hill in this area, 267 meters. This is the highest place on this front line. So Avdiivka is 238 meters, 230, 243, 21, 35, 16, 66, 77, 53, 61. So this small salient is the highest place, and the Russians are moving in this direction. Furthermore, I believe that they managed to establish control over a part of this hill. I believe that they will continue development in direction of this corner, and as soon as they do this, they will be able to control everything that located in the radius of 10 kilometers. So this square will be under Russian control. So let's one more time. If the Russians take, they will control the 10-kilometer square about this area, and that means that they will be able to establish physical control, fire control over every single road in this area. If you remember when we were talking about Bakhmut, as you can see, the Western source map has been updated. They're showing almost the same updated the Russians. We were talking about, we discussed that the most important area is this square, because this is the area that connects every single road that Ukrainians still have for rotation, resupplying process in this town. And the Russians did establish physical fire control over this square. Not the 100%, but very high control. And now when talking about Avdiivka, we understand that this square from now on is also the most important part of this area. And believe me, the Russians did establish fire control over this area as well. Nobody are saying this, at least for now, because everybody concentrated on Bakhmut. Believe me, situation in Avdiivka is almost the same as in Bakhmut. The only difference between the situation in Avdiivka with the situation in Bakhmut is that Bakhmut has been under siege since October or September, and of course these timings cause a lot of problems. The Ukrainian garrison inside of Bakhmut is without ammo, pills, without mats, without support, without supply, without anything. When talking about Avdiivka, this town appeared in operational tactical encirclement recently, and they still have depots to supply and support forces inside the town. They have inside the town ammo, the mats, they have food, they have everything. But believe me, in a month, if the Russians are not able to complete this mission in a month, Avdiivka is going to be the same story as in Bakhmut. Problems, a lot of losses, another tragedy, and another disaster for the Ukrainian army. So we see now there are two strategical battles, and we see that the Russians are winning two strategical battles in this area, Avdiivka and Bakhmut. I don't know what the Russians are planning to do with Liman. The Ukrainians, let's update this map, managed to establish this defense line, while during the winter, autumn, and beginning of spring period, how the Russians are going to return back over Liman, I don't understand. At least we will see this if the Russians start movements from the north. For now, we see that there are no movements from this area. And now let's move to Zaparozhie. When the Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of clashes in South Donetsk area, the Ukrainians lost 60 soldiers, 5 armored vehicles, including 4 tanks. So, and this is not just about Ugledar. These losses include the losses on Orechov, Guliapole, on Ugledar, Velika Novosovka. So 4 tanks is the highest level of losses of the Ukrainian side of tanks, among tanks, I believe, since the beginning of November of previous year. And this is this level of losses is the result of failed attempt of Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours to short the gray zone, as we discussed yesterday, and to get the front line. So maybe they managed to shorten the front line, managed to shorten the gray zone between Russian position and their own position. But we see the level of losses and what they were forced to, what price they were forced to pay for that. Some sources are saying that the Ukrainians will make more and more attempts to do this, and to tell the truth, it's time. You know that if the Ukrainians want to start offensive operation in direction of the Black Sea within a month, they need to start doing this every single day. They need to train, they need to get experience, they need to focus on this area. So we will see if we are going to see another attempt within the next few days. Believe me, in less than in a month, we are going to see the greatest battle in this area. But the Russians are saying that they managed to establish at least 3 lines of defense line. This is the first defense line that the Russians managed to establish. This is the second defense line that the Russians managed to establish, and this is the third defense line that the Russians managed to establish in this area. To tell the truth, I don't think that the Ukrainians are able to do anything. But the question for the Ukrainians is not about whether they are able to do something or not. The Ukrainians need investments. They need money. They need more support. They need more supply. And it's like a business. You need to show result, and then you will receive more money. If you are not showing result, the business will be closed. So they need the result. They need they need more clashes. I'm talking about the Western countries. So, and the Ukrainians need more money. They need to supply economy. They need to follow this story, to continue this story. So that's why they will be forced to start doing something. We'll see whether they are able to do this or not within the next few weeks, I believe so. And when talking about Kherson, the Ukrainians lost 35 soldiers, 1 tank, imagine yourself, without any combats on the ground. The Ukrainians lost a tank and 3 artillery systems, 2 Grad and 1 D-30 Howitzer. So as you can see, the situation is critical. Every single day we receive more and more updates, more and more pieces of news about the situation. We see that the Russians are pushing, and something tells me that sooner or later the entire situation will be broken by the Russians, I believe so, and then we're going to see completely different picture. More and more sources are saying about possible ceasefire during the summer, because I understand that the Western countries understand the critical situation. You know that there are a lot of problems with the banks in Switzerland, in the United States of America, and I believe in that nobody cares about the situation in Ukraine right now. I believe that it's time for the Western countries to start doing something in their own countries and to solve issues on their own level of their countries. And I believe that soon nobody will be care about Ukraine at all, and then they're going to be completely different story. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon. Have a good day. Bye bye.